Unsolicited advice.
What you whispering for? Yo, what's unsolicited advice? Take it or leave it. I feel like playing some music, but I'm gonna wait. So, if you live in a small town, you know what a small town mentality is. So, a small town mentality pretty much is a mindset, or an attitude often associated with people living in a small or rural community. Not everybody in a small town thinks the same way, but it's used to describe a certain type of people. They're limited, they're judgmental, in the way of thinking. It has a positive and negative connotation, depending on depending on what we're talking about. But for the most part, small town mentality can be very stunting of your growth. So, common traits of small town mentality. I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. The first thing is just pretty much fear of change or outsiders. People have suspicion and discomfort around new ideas, new people, or anything unfamiliar. You live in a small town, you like what you like, and you don't want nobody changing it. You don't want nobody trying to reinvent the wheel. You like things the way that they are. Another thing is there's a lot of pressure to conform, kind of get in line. So so there's a lot of strong expectations to behave a certain way, to dress a certain way, or to live a certain way. They don't want you to deviate from the normal, because that'll lead to people gossiping about you or excluding you from things because you're not doing what they want you to do. And you're not, getting in where you fit in. One of the biggest things that you have to deal with small town mentality is gossiping. And there's that word again, but you're probably gonna hear that a lot. But that's the biggest thing. Everyone knows everyone's business. And word travels fast. And I've always, felt like you have no privacy. Privacy is hard to maintain in a small town. You go to Walmart, everybody knows you, everybody sees you. You go to your local restaurant, everybody knows you, everybody sees you. You go to local sporting events, everybody knows you, everybody sees you. You try to go to the hotel to get away from everything, everybody knows you, everybody sees you. Go to the hospital, everybody telling your business of why you're in the hospital. So it's gossip everywhere. Even if you eat. And church is supposed to be the most holiest, sanctified, safe place you can go to. But that's where all the gossip ends up, usually. So, even even churches in small towns are not sacred when it comes to gossiping. Another thing that you see, and it's almost like a cycle, resistance to progress. There's a lot of pushback against innovation, against diversity, or just, modern lifestyles, Like I said, it's always that we've always done it this way of thinking, There's just going to be a lot of pushback. Nobody wants you to be bigger than the next person. It's like crabs in a barrel. Another thing I'd say is there's a lot of judgmental attitudes. You deal with a lot of judgmental attitudes. There's just people are quick to label you as weird or label you as trouble or different based on your opinion, your appearance, your belief, or just your choices. Doesn't make you a bad person. It's just if you're not doing what they're doing, or you're not dressing the way they're dressing, or you're not acting the way they're acting, then you're weird. you know, you're trouble. Yeah. Uh, Also, when you're in a small town, there's limited opportunities. There's not a whole lot of opportunities. Not a whole lot of opportunities. You know, you get a sense that you shouldn't dream too big, or you shouldn't leave. You know, because success is for older, older people as they get older or whatever, or other people. You know, but there's a reason why there's success for people elsewhere, because there is. Once you get outside of that small town, you'll notice that you can be more successful, that you can dream bigger, because the smaller the town, the smaller the thinking. But, there's some good things too to small towns, and small town mentalities. There's a good, strong community bond if you find the right community within your town. There's certain traditional values that are still good. That's one of the reasons why some people move to small towns, because you kind of want, people going to schools, and you go into your local farmers market, things like that, So there's a lot of emphasis on family, hard work, loyalty, simple living. That's another good thing with small towns. If you're living in a small town, you pretty much are having a taste for the simple life, simple living. It's a slower pace. Fewer like material distractions. You just want, like you say, you just want to sit on your porch and have something nice to drink, and you just want to enjoy the breeze or whatever. The fall leaves coming down, or you just want to enjoy watching kids and family outside playing or whatever. You just want that little small town mentality. Just that comfort. And for some small towns, you move there because the crime rate is low, or it's just for a familiarity. Feeling safe or stability due to close-knit, community. You feel like if something goes wrong, you're not too far from people that could either give you answers or help, things like that. So the thing about small town mentality is it's all in the limits you put on yourself. You are going to have people that are going to try to steer you from doing. They're going to tell you you're doing too much, or maybe you need to calm down. You got too much going on. You can't listen to that. Whatever you got to get it out of your system. If you have dreams and you have ambition, get it out of your system. But if you prefer the small town, then there's nothing wrong with that. Embrace your community. Embrace where you live. It all depends on what you like. But that's my unsolicited advice. Take it or leave it.